When humans attract what they want and they get what they want, what is that? Why do people self-sabotage that? And sort of, they get it, they enjoy it, and then they let it slip away, and then they're right back into like a suffering kind of a mode. Like, why would we get what we want and then sabotage it?
Well, sometimes it's all about focus. And what's really going on, in other words, once you really get a theme of well-being going in your life experience, it's because you understand the law, you understand the vortex. It's really because you finally come to acknowledge that the way you feel matters most, that the way you feel is feeling good is what you want most. When feeling good is what you want most, that self-sabotage won't happen. Now, here's what we mean. Let's say that what you want is what? Give us an example of something that someone self-sabotages about.
Money.
So you know what you don't want. You don't want to be deprived of doing things you want to do. You know what you don't want. You don't want to have debt high and financial pressure high. You know what you don't want. You don't want to struggle. You know what you don't want. You don't want to work hard for a little money. In other words, and in all of that, knowing what you don't want, you know that you want respect. You know that you want to be well paid. You know that you want a feeling of freedom. You know you want to do really fun things. You know you want to have nice things around you. You know you want the lifestyle that you want. And so in all of what you don't know, knowing what you don't want, you know what you do want to. So let's say that you've got a sort of know what you don't want, know what you do want thing going on. But you've been doing this for a long time. You've been doing this almost from your first awareness as you were first watching those around you when you were very, very young. So you've been gathering or amassing this financial, vibrational reality for a very long time. Now, the thing that we most want to establish here in this conversation, because it will help us all through the day, and it will help you as we proceed in the questions and answers as we're having this discussion here and now. This amassing of who you have become, who you really are, this is the dominant vibration. There is a really, really, really compelling, powerful vortex that is calling you to that. So much so that we want to say to you, and we have not said this, what we're about to say, anywhere near as clearly as we're about to say it to you right here and now. The what you do want is dominant, and its absence could not exist if the presence of what you do want did not exist. In other words, you couldn't get what you don't want if there were not this really powerful what you do want swirling. And we so want you to understand that they're not equal forces, that what you do want is really, 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 really a powerful calling. So what we're really talking about when we talk about sometimes you let it in and sometimes you resist it. In other words, you started this conversation by saying, sometimes I sabotage. And we think that that's good terminology because it really is the level of resistance that we're talking about here. It's not the level of wanting. The level of wanting has been well established. The vortex is big and has been calling you for a long time. So it's not that you're weak on your wanting when things don't go well. It's that you're high on your resisting. So the direct and specific and such good answer that we want to shout it to you in response to why do I sabotage what I want? Why do sometimes I get what I want and then I turn around and sabotage it is because your level of resistance ebbs and flows. Sometimes you're more resistant, sometimes you're less resistant. You're less resistant when you're distracted from big issues. You're less resistant when you find something that you really, really like and you focus on it a lot. In other words, you fall in love or you get some really good sports team that is doing really well, that gets you to focus on it in a stronger way than usual. In other words, your resistance goes down when your team's winning. Just because the natural ebb and flow of what you give your attention to is less resistant. So really the key to a more stable experience is to understand what resistance is, to understand what it feels like in the early subtle stages, and to do your best to not do that thing you do that holds you in that place of resistance. Our favorite analogy relative to resistance is a cork bobbing on the surface of the water is, in our analogy, where we want you to be vibrationally. It's where you are with no resistance. It's pure positive energy. Now you can hold that cork under the water, but it doesn't want to stay there. When you stop doing that thing you're doing that's holding it down, it will bob right back to the surface. And when you stop doing that thing that's holding you away from this vortex, the vortex will take you to it. So well-being is way, 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 way bigger. It's evident as you look around your planet. It's evident as you look at your physical body. It's evident as you look at in terms of mass consciousness, but it's even evident when you look in terms of individual consciousness. The well-being is huge in relationship to the not well-being. So now, let's have more discussion about...
I guess my concern was that you think you want something, you get it, and then you resist it because maybe it's not what you want in the first place, but then you still sit there and go, well, I do actually want it.
It isn't like that, though. It's that you wanted the financial well-being, and you were distracted enough that you got into the vicinity of the vortex, and the vortex took you in, but you weren't practiced enough inside the vortex. So your habit of thought was more outside the vortex than inside the vortex, and so at first the manifestation was enough to hold you there for a little while, but something that you're seeing in terms of manifestation is never enough to hold you in the vortex, because that's really an important distinction. You've got to get vortex muscles. You do. You have to practice being in the vortex even when there's no compelling physical reality reason to be in the vortex. You can't let what is, most people want what is to be so good that all they have to do is just look at it and it automatically be in the vortex. But because of the contrasting nature, and most important, because of the evolutionary motion forward nature, you just can't get lackadaisical about your thoughts. You have to train your thoughts there. The example that we've been giving recently, and it's a really good one, and it speaks precisely to what you're talking about, is that, and it's interesting because over time we have written so many books. This Ask and It Is Given book isn't here, but it is full of process. It is the most process-oriented book that we have offered. 22 processes. Those 22 processes are evaluated and offered depending upon where you are in relationship to the vortex. In other words, if you're depressed, you're so far from the vortex that it's a different process that will help you than if you're feeling hopeful and very close to the vortex. In other words, the processes are offered to dig deeper into resistance depending upon where you are on the emotional scale. The further from your alignment you are, then the process is offered to compensate a bit for that difference in vibration. So all of that is well and good, and many people have Esther found herself asking herself, well, what's my emotion? And she would look on the emotional scale and she would say, well, this handful of processes would be best for me. And she found that she got better results by using those processes. She was able to release resistance. But in all of that, she was deliberately focused, and she had an intention in mind. Want to move up the emotional scale, want to get to feeling better. And that's what has to come first. But recently, we've been approaching these processes in a different way. And this speaks so powerfully to what you're talking about as we play with these affirmation cards. Now, these are the money and law of attraction cards. So they speak precisely to the question that you're talking about. So let's say that you recognize that you're in a place of resistance, and you are feeling extra concerned because you were on a path of improvement and have slipped back from it. And so now you're actually using words like self-sabotage as you're talking about it, and you say, I need to take this bull by the horns and do something about it. I think I will go to an Abraham seminar. I think I will go to an Abraham seminar, and I will buy an Abraham product that will really help me to, and so what applies to me? Money applies to me. So you pick up these cards from this place of feeling particularly irritated about sabotaging yourself, and you set out to make things better. You say, I can make a career of living happily ever after. You got to be kidding me. We're each responsible for the thoughts we think. Well, why not just rub salt in my wound? My career is one of creating a joyful life experience. Well, tell that to my debtors. My life is as good as I allow it to be. Well, now that's perfect. That's just perfect. Welcome to planet Earth. You're here to seek joy. Who writes this stuff? So the point that we're making is nothing helps. When you're outside the vortex and you've got that vibe going, and it isn't that you're necessarily sabotaging it right now in this moment, and it isn't that there was some dumb action or something that you did wrong that you should have done differently. It's only that your habit of thought relative to money is more about the problem than it is about the solution because of what you've been observing. And while you can distract yourself from that from time to time, still the way you deeply feel is that money comes hard, and that maybe some people who have it got it in ways they shouldn't, or in other words, they are just habits of thought that you've been practicing that are just stronger within you. So this is what we're recommending relative to affirmations. Don't try to use an affirmation from outside the vortex to get in. All it will do is make you dig in your heels and defend like you've done to your mother for years. In other words, it's just the way that it always works out. Have you ever had someone, you have a different opinion than someone that you are debating or even arguing with, and the more they tell you what they know to be true, the more you know they're not right. And the more you dig in other words, there is this defensiveness that you've sort of learned that makes you defend where you are. And what that defensiveness, now we want to really explain that defensiveness, because it comes from very deep-seated, very well-meaning, and actually very valuable roots. It comes from the roots of knowing that you are good, and knowing that you are free, and knowing that you do create your own reality. In other words, you've been defending your right to be free and your right to think for so long, but you've been defending it. In other words, it comes from a place, a frustrating place of knowing that it should be easier than it is. So here's what we're recommending. Now, all of these processes, use them if they help you, and sometimes they do. But what we are really wanting you to understand is that sometimes, without even knowing how you got there, you find yourself in the vortex. Maybe you're watching a sporting event. Maybe you're playing a video game. Maybe you're thinking about sexuality or sex itself. Maybe you're having sex. Maybe you're eating something that's good. Maybe you're listening to some sort of beautiful music. Something, the face of your dog is particularly captivating you. Something has taken you into the vortex. And you realize that you're there because your heart is lifting just a little bit. You have that moment where you just feel that lightness. And what we want you to do is recognize that you're in the vortex, and then contemplate how to milk that moment just a little bit. In other words, from inside the vortex, if you're in the vortex, that's the time to do 100% of your affirming. In other words, when you find your heart lifting, that's when you want to say, hey, universe, this is it. This is how I want to feel. Keep this coming. This is what I like. Don't know exactly how I got here, but I'm liking this. I'm liking this. I'm liking this. I'm liking this. I'm going to try to hold this feeling as long as it's gone. But the fact that you made the effort to hold it that much longer, you practice the inside the vortex vibration. Let all